Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie LawnStars.
James Miotto, or as you're more well known, Mosquito. Welcome to the dungeon.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's been, what is it, over 2 years?
21, I believe, the last time.
We had a bit of a catch up in Queensland last year.
Yes.
But we didn't record you then. So
No.
finally, are you actually 18 yet, or you're 17?
18 since February 14th.
So you're legal now. Welcome to
I
the
guess
dungeon.
some would say.
That makes you 30 years younger than me.
30. Oh, yeah.
I'm feeling old.
No, I don't look 30 years younger than you. Maybe 20.
not quite 30 years, but it's pretty darn close, right?
Yeah.
So last time we recorded, you were 15.
I believe so, yeah.
I know I recorded Jesse and I recorded you. Jesse was 13, you were 15 at the time. And back then you were working after school, maybe doing weekends, working with your dad. That was 15 years of age and you were in school and you were doing work with your dad on the weekends. You've had a lot of changes since then.
Yeah, for sure.
So one of them would be you're an adult, obviously.
Yeah.
But you've finished school?
So I had my last day of school yesterday. I've got to go in
Good
next
timing.
week and I've got to do a presentation for vocational major, which is like the new version of VCAL. So once I've completed that presentation, then I get my high school certificate and then I'm all good. I'm done.
Yeah, okay.
So
Awesome. So whilst you've been doing your high school certificate, you've also been doing some work in the industry, getting
yes.
trade qualified.
Yep. So
So
Cert 3 Parks and Gardens.
So that's through, what did you say, the new version of VCAL?
Well, that's actually a school-based apprenticeship because the new version of VCAL, they'll usually do a Cert 2. So it's a 2-year, half-day. There's no apprenticeship link to it. But Dad had a chat with the school and we ended up organising it so I could do a Cert 3 apprenticeship. So
Yeah.
I'm doing the VCAL classes and that sort of thing, and I'm doing a apprenticeship course. So a lot of people are doing pre-apprenticeship, but then that sort of gets you a year or so off your qualification, which is really good.
So you're also doing work with Dale Pakenham?
Yes,
Urban
sure
Health?
am. Yep,
And that I guess that helps you to get the apprenticeship call?
100%. So yeah, he pays put me through TAFE, and then I'll work with him throughout my school years. I've been every Thursday. We'll hopefully pick up a few more days next year. So it'll be a balance between working part-time with him and then part-time on my own work.
Yeah, so shout out to Dale Pakenham. He needs to come on the podcast himself one of these days.
Good luck. See how we go. You'll have to keep trying.
I'm not holding my breath, because if I was holding my breath, I would have no content waiting for him.
That's right. You would have passed out a long time ago.
I'm doing a couple of sneakies here and there to try and work out how to get a hold of him. I'll see if I can pin him down and drag him into the dungeon one day.
Good luck. That's all I've got to say.
I've got a couple of spies in his midst.
Right.
I try and get a bit of info out of you every now and then, but also got another one in there. So
Okay.
I might actually sneak down there one day on my motorbike, because I heard he's been into motorbikes. So I reckon
Yes, he is. Yeah, that's
I
a
could
recent
trick him
thing.
into going riding and then put a camera in front of him.
Sneaky man you are.
I have a problem though at the moment. I can't actually ride my motorbikes. It's
What's
sore.
happened?
I went for a ride down in Victoria recently.
Right.
It's about almost 4 weeks ago now. It'll be
Yeah.
4 weeks tomorrow. I actually left to go down there. And whilst I was riding down through all the Vic High Country, we got rained on and then snowed on while we were riding through there.
Yeah, I think I remember that day. There was one like that here. It was rain and it was hail. And I was just like...
Yeah, it was a cold front that moved through.
Yeah.
So for people in Victoria that know the geography better than I do, we went from Mitta down to Omeo, and once we got to Omeo, it started raining, and we were heading back across towards Orbost, and just got absolutely drowned wet. And then from Orbis back up to Bombala.
No clue.
And Bombala's back in New South Wales, but the road from Orbis back to Bombala, we were just getting snowed on. It was like, it wasn't sleet, it was snow falling on us.
Oh, yeah.
While we're riding motorbikes.
It's not good. Not a good combination.
Consequently, I've got some issues with my neck from leaning forward on the sport bike for 4 days straight, and it's taken a little while to get the nerve pain to settle down.
Fair enough.
So if I hop back on my bike at the moment, it just triggers it straight away.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Get on the magnesium. I guess nerves, not muscular, but...
Well, it's muscles that are causing the problem, I guess. The nerves are probably a bit squashed by the muscles being tight, and it's not settling down. It's 4 weeks later, and it should have settled down.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah. So we'll keep you on the physio. We'll get it sorted, and then I'll come chasing Dale. Yeah. So in the meantime, with doing all that, finishing school, your own business has gone from what some people would laugh at and go, "Oh, it's just a school kid out there doing $25 jobs," to you've stepped it up a notch and you're doing a lot more work. Are you still working with your dad, or you been 18? You have your own driver's license. You're able to drive yourself to the jobs now. You don't need your dad.
Yeah. So I'll keep the story sort of somewhat short. Bit of a summary.
Yeah.
So at 18, obviously I can go for my driver's license. It took me 3 goes to get my driver's license. I chose, you Melbourne guys will know, Carlton, because it was the soonest booking in manual at 8:30. So that was a contributing factor alongside the fact that I had no driving lessons prior. So you pick up all, your parents' bad habits.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was about a month late getting my license. So not too bad considering it was 3 attempts. And then once I got my license, pretty much from then on, I was basically just out solo. So I was out solo maybe 2 months, just, part-time obviously. And then Dad had some heart issues. So he ended up having to have a quadruple bypass, I believe it is. So, that kind of spiced things up a little bit, So he's off while that sort of recovers. And they cut your collarbone from here to here, I think it is. Collarbone or chest bone or sternum or something like that. So
sternum sounds right.
That sounds like the one.
Yeah.
So he's about a year recovery before he can do any strenuous lifting. So,
Wow. Yeah, that'll slow him down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's not good. But in the meantime, you're out there working solo still?
Well, that's it. Yep, still I'll get a good amount done as a sort of solo. I probably work a little bit too hard, but I'm young. I can still get away with it. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so have you been purchasing equipment left, right and centre? I know Jesse's always into purchasing new equipment, but I'm guessing...
Oh, a little bit. So the last 2 years with me and Dad in the partnership since our last chat on air,
a
few new changes and a fair lot of our money that wasn't spent on, our bare minimum living expenses was really just reinvested into, more equipment and things like that. But this year I'm trying to go for a bit more of a profitable year and actually get something from the business and build up a bit of a house deposit. So
nice.
That's the goal.
Yeah. You've been working on your own and buying tools, but you're trying to hold off on buying too many tools.
Well, I've got everything I need for the sort of work that I'm doing. So the direction of my business has changed a little bit since probably 6 months ago. So I don't remember if I mentioned this when we were on call, if we hadn't had that contract at that stage, but we ended up picking up a school contract. So we did that for about 3 years, and we've only just stopped doing that as of June last year.
Yeah.
Oh, June last financial year.
Right.
So that was when we went to first look at that. I had absolutely no idea. I rode there on a bike, hid the bike around the corner.
Yeah.
So it was a proper fake it till you make it sort of thing.
Yep.
Ended up putting in a quote to mow the front. I think at $150 plus GST, and I think we ended up being there, me and Dad, for 4 hours. And then after that, he was like, "Do you want to just do an hourly rate?" And Dad was fresh leaving his job, so we're like, "Yeah, sure." And so the hourly rate was okay to start with, and it was good sort of branching from when Dad was leaving work and stuff. We had that guaranteed income there.
Yep.
But over time, it sort of just became. It was a very big commitment, and we got we went from just our scope being lawns to lawns and gardens, and there's just two of us. We only have a couple of days a week. So it was really, really challenging to keep on top of that. And I think towards the end, we just weren't getting those results visually that they wanted. We weren't set up to be doing the job efficiently. We don't have a big mower, So, yeah, it just ended up with, we got to a point where we were like, you know what, I'll put in a fixed price to do the turf and all the lawns, and then we'll put in, 2 days a week of labour to do all your gardens and all that sort of thing. They got a few other quotes, and I think I probably came in a little bit dear because I was sort of trying to charge enough that I could cover, you know what I mean? I don't want to be working at the same hourly rate and investing, say, $10,000 to $20,000 into a 52-inch, 60-inch mower.
Of course.
So I think I probably priced myself a little bit out of the ballpark, which is, stuff happens. So
that's an issue which has come up on LMCA recently. Luke Smith made a post about the cost of running a decent ride-on, and he was talking about spending $25,000 on a ride-on and what your hourly rate needs to be to reflect what it's worth. And
for sure.
I commented on his post, and I'm like, you're going to send people out of business, Luke, because that's one of those things that comes up. You put your price up where you think you need to cover your hourly rate, and all of a sudden you lose the quote.
That's right.
The job that's really important to make it worth having the machine.
And I think as well, because if that got approved, we would have invested the money. I wouldn't have made much money, like that year out of it, but it was a direction that I wanted to take the business into, that sort of larger ride-on sort of thing. But that's very hard considering the area that I'm in, is there's not much of that sort of work on a residential basis around me where you can use those big mowers. So it's always something I've wanted to do, but you're not going to do it without the work being there. And I'm not eager to travel 40 minutes just to, use the mower. So that just wasn't to be. And so now I'm just focusing in more on the, I guess, bread and butter, really residential, strata, small commercial, gardening. I've branched out to a lot more gardening. So, I
was talking to somebody else about this issue recently in terms of growing your business and growing it where it's profitable. You're much better off focusing on building your business where it's easy for you to get customers than trying to chase those customers that in your mind might be premium customers, but in reality they might be looking for cheap.
Well, that's right. And it's, commercials are very, as you would know, obviously it's sort of, cutthroat price wise, and, they've got a budget, which is, they can't really spend much more than that. And I also think I'm probably a little bit over the top, and I probably allowed a little bit too much time to do a bit too much as far as the quality of the job as well. I'm trying to carry that residential detail into a, couple acre property. It just doesn't really, it's not effective, and it's not something that's affordable really.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into these sorts of quotes. When you're pricing commercial work where you're there for a day or 2 days a week or full time, then you don't have some of the overheads you have when you need to be able to move your equipment between jobs.
100%.
And you also are not going to go for that same attention to detail that you do on a smaller job where, let's face it, if we're talking go back to this magic number, if you're talking an $80 job where you turn up, the customer pays $80, you give them that lawn service and you walk away again, the margin that they've got to work with is limited. So if you put their price up by 20%, that's a big jump for them. But if you're talking about that residential customer, you can upsell them on quite a few services in terms of their yard looking better, and they see results for what they're spending on. Whereas when you're talking a large commercial job and you're spending a day a week there and you're trying to convince them that you needed to be there full time so that you can do the gardens justice, they don't perceive that to be valuable.
They don't see the value.
Yeah. But the other factor there is hourly rates for residential jobs or any job where you need to move in and out with a vehicle. So you drive in, unload, do the job, load back up, drive back out again. You've got the unbillable hours on those sites.
100%.
I'm there for an hour or half an hour or 10 minutes, whatever it is. The unbillable hours are proportional to how short the job is, which is why we talk about minimum quotes. Whereas once you're saying, I'm in one place for a whole day, you take your lunch break while you're there.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
You take rest breaks while you're there, because you can't just work for 8 hours solid. You've got to stop and have a drink. You got to stop and have a break and have lunch and all those different things whilst you're on that site.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
all those things get factored in, and where those 15-minute residential jobs, you might be calculating it somewhere around $150 an hour or $180 an hour in terms of how you're quoting it.
Yeah.
If you quote $80 or $90 an hour on a commercial site, your day rate at the end of the day will be similar.
Yes, I understand what you mean.
But
yeah,
the perceived value is very different. If you go to the commercial site and you say, I'm going to be there all day, 2 days a week, and I'm going to charge you $200 an hour, they're going to laugh at you.
100%.
So yeah, that is an interesting one. That's, I guess it's a learning experience, isn't it?
100%. I would approach that a lot differently, now, I think. And it's just, you get that idea into your head that, you're not charging enough. You sort of, you're the last thing you want to do is trap yourself in a year contract that, like a less than what's ideal, I'd say. It's not like a residential job where you just turn around and say, hey, look, I want to just change things a little bit. So I wanted to make sure I got that right. And I think I'd sort of overestimated on that a little.
Well, I guess the other thing there is your reputation and word of mouth are things that work together. So
100%.
When you do residential jobs, you might have, if you're doing just solo full-time on your own, you might have anywhere between 50 customers and 200 customers, depending on the size of the jobs. If you've got that number of customers, then your reputation is spread across those customers, and the word of mouth spreads because you have that number of customers. So if you're doing around 100 customers, you will find that the people spreading the word that you do a good job will end up yielding some commercial jobs.
Yeah, for sure. I guess when it's just a numbers game, isn't it, really? You throw enough people out there and one of them is going to get you something.
Yeah, and if you specifically try and find people that can help you gain commercial work, then that amplifies that outcome. But at the same time, if you're chasing commercial jobs that are larger, so whole days on site instead of an hour or half an hour or a couple of hours, if you're chasing those jobs, then your word of mouth and your values don't reach as far because you're only getting one customer.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's incredibly valuable for people starting out to work on building their reputation first and getting the results by having a lot of small customers. And if they really want to grow their business to the next level, then they need to start having multiple teams to start tackling commercial jobs and residential jobs at the same time if they want to keep their business in growth mode.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a snowball. It's just a time thing, like I look at some of the work that I get now and it's like I could have done this 5 years ago to the same standard, but it just takes time for that snowball to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where you're getting these recommendations, you know what I mean? So it's just to do the right thing and just be patient, and it will just sort of come with time.
Yeah, I think the other aspect for you would be now that you've finished school, you can dedicate more time to this. So
for sure, and especially having my license, I'm able to get to these quotes. They call me, I'm able to be there that day or the next day. Not relying on Dad to take me or stashing the bike in the next street. So that helps.
Yeah, that's it. So that'll make sure that your business growth is amplified because you have more time available. Your supply and demand ratio has changed. Are you thinking of leaving your job to start a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie LawnStars shares stories, lessons, and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient, and sustainable business. Got questions or want more information? Contact Aussie LawnStars at iCloud.com. or reach out to Gary Ashton on Facebook or Messenger for personal help. But beware, your question may end up in a podcast episode. For business coaching that ensures the right mindset and decision-making approach, check out Think Tank Coaching. Their website is https://thinktankcoaching.com.au. They've been instrumental in helping me and can guide you towards achieving your business goals. You can also email them at thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. Need to set up best practices for bookkeeping, accounting and business structure? Contact Adrian from Prosper Financial at 02 4977 3363. And don't forget to join Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups. Great supportive communities focused on our industry.
As of we lost that job in June. So the amount that we invoiced out to them last year, which was around the 50,000 mark, I believe. Yeah. I calculated that with the regular jobs I've picked up since then, I'm about $5,000 a year off replacing all of that. And I'm able to carry like all that workload is like on my own. We were charging for two of us when we were doing that site. So It's not the money. It's more just like, I think it was just that this is the direction I wanted to go, if anything. So,
yeah.
But you know what? Things happen for a reason, I guess. And,
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how you go if your dad comes back on once he's recovered and able to start doing physical work again as well.
He might come on sort of part-time, to help me out when he gets busy. But, he's in his 60s. He's probably getting to the point where he's not going to be doing this day in and day out. But he's really handy with like mechanical stuff. Like he does all the maintenance on all my equipment and things like that, and keeps all our stuff up to speed. And we have little breakdowns or little niggles, and he's always able to sort it out, which is really helpful. So
awesome.
Saves me a lot of money and a lot of downtime, which is really, really good.
Yeah, definitely. So you'll be able to become more efficient from what you're saying in terms of your residential jobs. You're working on your own, but your daily take home is still comparable to what you're doing with two people.
Well, compared to be honest with you, I think a big portion of this is probably pricing. And the different, like I've picked up a lot of new work since we were working together. A lot more sort of larger jobs that are around that $100 mark plus.
Yep.
Because the thing I was finding before, like when we were doing a lot of 50s, a lot of 60s, and you know what I mean? When you're doing $50 and $60 mows, even if your hourly rate's right, it is hard to get that, let's say, $1,000 a day because you've got so many places you have to go to. But if you throw in, let's say, an average of $70 to $80 a cut, and you throw in a 200 or a 300 or something like that, or even a lawn and garden package sort of thing for one or two, that gets you to that mark.
Yeah.
And you don't really see a huge difference in efficiency on, like a lawn mowing run, really, to be honest, on these small properties.
Yeah.
So, it's just there's a lot of factors that go into it, and there's lots of little things you can do to speed you up where, like you might get to a job and you'll be like, hey, I'm going to mow this with, let's say, the stand on or whatever. I can get away with mulching it and still get a good result today. There's not extreme growth. There's not leaves everywhere. There's no leaves in the gutter. I don't have to blow the gutter, and pick those leaves up.
Yeah.
Or, like it's not that long. I'll mow first and then I'll trim at the end. I don't need to use the edges today. The edges aren't too bad. So in my head, I'm thinking all these things through. Whereas when there's two of you, you've got to communicate that and you've got to sync it up.
Yeah.
So,
and that is hard when you've got two people.
For sure.
I've found the number of times when I've had just two people working on a residential run and you're going, this customer is not paying us to care.
Yeah, well, that's,
or this customer is paying the price where it doesn't matter if the edges look like they've been done yesterday. We're doing them.
Well, that's the thing. It's just, it's very hard to sort of communicate what I'm thinking to someone else. And it's like a mental tax. I go and work on my own. I put my headphones in. I don't have to think. And I can just think on the go. And I'm just, you know what I mean? I get into that zone and I can work all these things out without putting in any effort and not worrying, what are they going to do? What am I going to do? How are we going to time this out? And so no one's standing around. So, yeah.
I think this is where a lot of lawn care and gardening businesses hit a wall because the solo person starts up being a technician, and usually that means they're focused on exactly what you're talking about, how to make sure that the customer is getting perceived value, how to make sure that when you turn up, you're going, okay, I know what the customer needs here to be happy with paying what I'm quoted them, and I'm making sure that I deliver that, and I can change what I'm doing from week to week. to make sure that that customer is still getting good value.
Getting that satisfactory result,
But when you start dealing with employees, trying to transition from you being the technician on the job to trusting your employees to be able to make the right decisions there, and you starting to having to do employee management, it's a completely different game. It's
100%.
no longer the same business.
Oh, it's like I have people help me from time to time. I have a few like subcontractors and mates and stuff. So I've worked with Jesse, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see because he's obviously pretty good on the tools and stuff. Like we get out of the job, we don't have to talk. One does this, one does that. We work in with each other. He's well versed snipping, edging, blowing, trimming, you know what I mean? Like all that sort of stuff. And the money we might make like on the same run of jobs, I did it on my own and then we did it together and we were about $300 difference. I did a harder day on my own, obviously, but it's like, it's not noticeable, but then it's like, I think too, I do work pretty hard and pretty quick. You can't expect someone to work like that. Like I think if you're both hitting, let's say, fictional numbers, $600 to $800 per person per day, that's okay, So
yeah. Well, I tell people at the moment $500 a day average is actually quite acceptable, and most people are going to want more than that. But you're talking about averages rather than your
100%.
best days.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that with you and Jesse because you both are contractors, so you both have a approach to running business where it's about trying to maximize the amount of pay you get for the least amount of time you spend on the job.
Well, that's right.
You still find when you're working together that you're not doubling your income, so to speak.
No way. But the other thing you got to consider too is at the price we're getting for the two of us for the day, you can afford to pay someone and still make a bit on top. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think the thing is with staff, it's not you hire one person and you're going to make a fortune. I think the way you've got to look at it is this is the business model. I'm worth 700, they're worth 700, etc. Maybe I can punch out a bit more, but ultimately you need to model off that. But I also think, and this is just a theory I've had as well, let's say your labor rate is $700 per person. If you're a solo, like for example, all your admin, all those sort of things, I know it does go up with a few people, but if you're doing, let's say, two people on a run and one, I've got to have the same amount of equipment. I've got to have all the admin software, all the maintenance. I'm still putting the hours on the equipment. So as a solo, let's say you're at, say, 1,000. With two of you, you might be at 700 or 600 each. But the thing is that, say, my wage, let's say, hypothetically, is $400, including PAYG, etc., all that.
Yeah.
Then there's a remaining left over. But if there's two or three of you, that's split between three people. But when it's just you, you've still got quite a bit of cost. So let's say the 700 might turn to 1,000 for one, if that makes sense. Yep. Do you get what I mean? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing which a lot of people haven't thought about until they've actually been in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? So if you look at it from a business perspective and you go, all right, if I'm a solo guy, I'm going to look at it and go, I want to do a $700 a day per person. So that's $1,400 a day for two people. That's $2,100 a day for three people. You're competing against the bigger businesses that are working on a narrow margin.
100%.
And so you can't expect to do that multiplication game when you start going from a small job to a big job, and you're no longer competing against another solo guy. You're competing against somebody who's sending teams of 3 people or 5 people out to big commercial jobs, and they're getting the job done quickly and efficiently and making like 5 to 10% margin.
Well, that's the issue I had even with that whole getting my head around that whole contract thing, because I'm like, when me and Dad would go there for, let's say, fictional number $60 an hour, there's two of you, so you're charging out at $120. But out of that $120, you still got to pay the same costs. Whereas if I go there on my own and I'm at $60, I can't make that work. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. And it's like I struggle to, like, I don't give people labor rates because me as a solo, I can't give you that hourly rate that someone with 5 staff can give you. I just can't. I can give you the value. I'll get the same amount of work done in that hour as they will, because we all know they're going to be 75% or 50% of you as far as work output, but I can't compete on the rate. So you've got to compete on value, not on your time.
So often a small business can gain jobs when they are doing just simple multiplication, going $700 a day per person. I'm going to bring 2 people in or 3 people in, and we're charging you X amount because it's based on just multiplying the number of people that are there. All right. You can gain a few jobs here and there by doing that. But once you're trying to run a business model that way, it falls apart.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where the larger companies start going, okay, let's look at the wages that it's going to cost us to run this many people. And we're starting to get into the stage where you're talking about more than 10 people in a business, and you've got somebody who looks after payroll, you've got somebody who looks after HR, you've got somebody who looks after maintenance of the equipment, and you've got a team leader for each of the teams that goes out. And you start getting into this complex middle management setup in a business, and you've got to analyze every cost in a business that size and start going, okay, in order for us to run this business, to do a job for Betty down the road, all of those admin costs come into it. But like you say, those costs start to become efficient when you go from a 2-person team to having a larger business where you got 10 people and you got separate people looking after admin and.
Well, that's the thing. Your costs might double, but it won't double from say 2 to 10. You know what I mean? So it's like when you break that down over 10, you divide the number per year of 5,000 by 10, not by 2. It's a lot less per hour. So it's really hard to compete on those jobs because you just don't have the numbers. You can't, drop down that low.
Most businesses that try and grow will fail in that zone, going from solo through to about three to 5 employees. They usually do okay, but between 4 employees and 10 employees, most businesses can't actually manage their costs well and still win quotes.
For sure, 100%. It's a whole different ballgame from, running around mowing lawns on your own. It's very easy to make that a very lucrative and profitable business. But when you go from that to, I'm going to run a business with staff and, you know what I mean? I'm not the main cog in the wheel. I'm just a small cog in the wheel. It's completely different, completely.
So I think that the biggest thing that changes there is the type of service that you offer, right? So in our industry, there are big players. When it comes to a fringe industry like tree lopping, they, generally speaking, don't have a lot of competition. It's not like lawn care where tree lopping, you have a much higher premium to get into the business.
Higher barrier to entry, yeah.
Yeah. So you can get away with charging a higher rate in tree lopping. And they talk about the insurance and the risk of the job and all those sorts of things as reasons why they get away with charging more. But at the end of the day, they've got a higher barrier to entry, and a lot of tree lopping businesses are still very small. So the small businesses there dominate the market, and the higher rates are reflecting that.
For sure.
So yeah, it's an interesting one. I know of a small number of large companies in the tree lopping game, but most of them are still small businesses.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a couple of big ones in Victoria, but there's not heaps. It's mostly just, they have a truck and have a chipper and maybe 2-3 guys in the truck, and they just run around like that.
Yeah, that's it. And some of them are incredibly efficient. I'd seen one the other day that I'm like, okay, that company has it all together, and then you see a whole lot of tree companies that look like cowboys.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. So that's interesting talking about these financial side of things. You've been in the business long enough now that as you're finishing school, you're starting to weigh up all of those factors and go, okay, what do I want my business to look like? For sure. So where do you see your business going at the moment in terms of whilst your dad's recovering and you're going, okay, do I want to be solo? Do I want to put on employees? Are you starting to look at that and go, I want to grow my business to the point where I've got multiple teams out on the road?
I think as an end goal, I would like to build a workplace that actually serves other people, because I feel like at the moment it's just me working and that's all fine, but I don't want this to be, you know what I mean? Like 2-3 years, I'm going to be at my capacity. Nothing's going to really change, and I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't want to live my life out just working just for me. I want to build something that's there after me. But at the same time, I've also, got to sort of work through whilst I complete my apprenticeship and things like that. So I think continue on as a solo with, occasional help, subcontractors, where need be. And then once I finish the apprenticeship, then we can look into upscaling a little and, hopefully go down that path. But I've just got to make sure that, I'm, profitable and I've got a bit of money there and I'm able to cop the cost of that, because that's going to be a bit of a shock going from you go out and you basically keep, let's say, 50 to 70% of what you earn to, you got to make sure you're not messing those quotes up, because it's not your time, which is free. It's, someone's paid time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at Mark Lattaway's model, I keep talking about Mark Lattaway on the episodes that I put out and saying, Mark, call me, correct me, because I know I'm going to quote you wrong. So last week I quoted him saying that his expenses were around 15%, and he messaged me back because I said, you'll correct me, I know you will. He messaged me back, and I think he
12?
said around 7% or something his expenses are.
Yeah, right.
So,
it's definitely possible. I think there's a lot of money to be made in a business where you focus on one thing, like let's say residential lawns, you've got your core equipment, you replace your core equipment as it goes, and you know what I mean? You just charge what the market can bear. You make a lot of money. Like, it is possible to keep your expenses. I have, friends that with their businesses, they'll be at 10, 15% expenses per year, and they're turning over a good amount of money. Yeah, it's definitely possible. Good lifestyle.
So I guess it comes down to how you want to run the business, right? And if you look at the average lawn care business, small business solo guys starting up, they're going to probably hit around 40% on their expenses, 40, maybe 50% on expenses, compared to the 10%, 15%, or Mark Lattaway's 7%.
Well, that's the thing. There's so many variables. So many variables. But
the other aspect there is a lot of small businesses, as they grow, they perceive that their expense ratio really should be on the high side to allow for growth. But in reality, a lot of small businesses, when they do that, are really just buying more equipment that's not helping the business grow.
I can relate to that. That's one trap I've got to make sure I don't fall into. I'm susceptible to the old, I don't have an issue with, not spending money on myself or for things like clothes and things like that. But then it comes sort of tax time, like, I wouldn't mind grabbing this piece of battery gear or this or that. And you know what I mean? So it's like spending money on it, to lower your taxable income isn't saving you that money. Like, you know what I mean? It's okay to do that if it's something you want to get and you can afford to do it. But I think even myself, and you know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of people, they fall into that trap of just buy things just to write off. But in reality, are you really getting ahead? You know what I mean?
Well, a solo person can afford to spend 40%, 50% of their turnover buying new equipment each year. And they're still going to be probably pretty okay, because the more they spend on equipment, the less tax they do have to pay.
Well, it's all your situation, like if you have your house, you've got a partner, you both work, you can pay yourself what you need to live. But, in my situation, I still live at home. I want to sort of get my on paper income up a bit, and I want to sort of save a bit of money, obviously, to have any chance of getting a house deposit in these sort of conditions. So, I can't really just keep that habit up.
And that's where the false economy of spending big to avoid tax really hits home, because
100%.
If you're spending 40 or 50% of your turnover on equipment, then your business is not actually growing. You're just buying new equipment.
The last 2 years, that's been exactly what we've been doing. But it's just come to a point now. It's like, I've invested enough and it has been worth it. Like, I have everything I've bought. I can't say I've bought anything that's useless or hasn't benefited me, but it's a cycle thing. It's a cut bulk cycle. So I've spent the money. I've increased my capacity to earn, and I have. It's visible in the money that I'm earning for a day and things like that. So now I've just got to really sort of get more of that work and really get all the things I've got working well for me. And there's nothing wrong with buying the odd thing here and there and tweaking things and stuff like that. But not this, 20, 30 grand a year buying this, buying that. Because as a solo, especially, like, another thing I think is you can only do so many things. I've only got 8 hours in a day for me. If I have 2 ride-on mowers, I can only use one at a time, so it's like, if I do get that bigger job, or I've got that thing where it's, this would be okay with a 52, but it takes me an extra 10 minutes with my 32, like, you want to have that equipment that's not always sitting, and at least when it does sit, it can afford to, if you know what I mean.
When we talk about having too many ride-ons, it makes me think of James Nankervis.
Yeah, maybe. I don't want to be naming and shaming, but yeah, I think he's sort of come to that conclusion.
We've got to call him out on that one. I know he's gone through phases where he's like, I've got to sell some mowers, I've got too many.
He's asking too much money. He's got to not post the photos with them in grass taller than me, and then you'll be all right, just only, driven once on Sundays.
Yeah, that's it, driven by grandma.
That's right.
But yeah, it's a real factor. If you look at it from the point of view going, is this equipment that I'm buying just replacing old equipment that I already have that's doing the job, or is it necessary to maintain the size business that I've got, or is it necessary to grow my business? And if it's growing the business, then the new equipment should be bringing on new staff to actually make you more productive.
100%.
Otherwise, you're actually going through grow, shrink, because you take on more customers. You start firing some of your old customers. You start going, I'm taking on acreage, so I'm going to make more money. But then you start dropping your residential customers because you've got this 60-inch machine that you're running around on trying to get all jobs with 60-inch machine. You're not doing the 21-inch jobs anymore.
Well, it's finding that balance. Like, for the sort of work I'm doing now, which is small to large residential, bit of strata, body corporate, I have the perfect setup for my area. I have the right mowers to cover it. I've got the trailer set up effectively. You know what I mean? I've got all the equipment I need to be very competitive as far as my job times and what I'm able to produce in that time. So it's like, there's no need to keep tweaking. And I feel like even with like whippersnippers, it's like you use one and you use another. I kind of like that more, and you end up just tripping out. It's like it comes to a point where, your Honda mower works. There's no need to try the Toro 21. I have a Honda. It works fine. You know what I mean? So
they both cut grass. And if you're looking at it from a larger business perspective, you're going, well, do I give my employee a Honda or a Toro? Well, it doesn't really matter.
Well, that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with trying different things, but I just know it's a cycle that even for me has been, I've tried countless different whippersnippers in the past. And it's like, it's come to a point now, it's like, I have one I'm happy with, stick with that. Don't go buying any different ones to try, even secondhand, because then you're going to like one over the other, and you're going to have a preference, and one will sit, So it's like when you find that equipment that works for you, it doesn't hurt to try things, but it also doesn't need to be constantly changed, and you're constantly chasing that best machine. But in reality, they're all going to have flaws in different areas, and if those flaws work within your business, you know what I mean? That's good enough.
So if you're not actively growing your business to put on new employees, then you really should be refining your expenses to make sure that your margins are as good as possible.
100%.
That sounds like you're heading the right direction with that. And at some stage, you will start growing your business and going, okay, I want to put on employees and put out multiple teams out there.
Yeah, for sure. We all with time.
Yeah. That's it. And I think the best business model to do is that one where you actually go, okay, get it refined where it's doing well, get your margins low, and then multiply.
Definitely.
And then it becomes a game again. Do I really want to be a people manager rather than a lawn mowing contractor?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a completely different thing.
It is. So either that, or you've got to hire somebody to do that management side of the business so that you can stay on the tools. And if you're staying on the tools and paying somebody else to do the higher level management, then it starts to become their business almost.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think there's a lot to be said for someone who works in the business and who can be actively seen. You know what I mean? Like every day out there doing their bit to push the ship, further down. But at the same time, you also need to save your time for those high value tasks that only you can do. I think that's something that, you know what I mean? It's a hard trap to not get into because, you know what I mean? Yeah. I see things, even when I've had people help me, if there's a spot missed, I go and fix it. You know what I mean? It's like, I've just got to show them and let them fix that. I've got to not, I see this here that they haven't done properly. I need to take them and show them and explain it to them. I can't just fix it myself. Or, when they're whip snipping and it's not quite right, or they're not getting it level. You know what I mean? You can't just go take it off them and just do it yourself. You've got to have that patience, invest that time, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the mistake that I've made, and I think a lot of other people make, is misunderstanding what your role as a business owner is and thinking that you're still an employee. Employees are incredibly good at making themselves indispensable, and that's the way they should be, right? You want your employees to be indispensable. You don't want to make yourself indispensable when you're the business owner. You want to make yourself replaceable.
Yeah, 100%. That's the idea. Yeah.
So I think that's unfortunately what we do as business owners is we make ourselves indispensable. We make it so that we are the technician, we are the employee, we are the sole person who makes that customer happy, rather than going, all right, let's give that job to an employee to make that customer happy. How do we make a system so that that employee, like you were saying, knows what to do so that you don't have to sit there explaining it to them every time?
Well, that's the thing. I think even on the minimum award rate for our industry, if you were paying overtime, I think I'd be in the negatives at the moment. But, that's a stage you go through, but it's important you break out of that mindset. So that's going to be a bit of a struggle, I think. So
it's a struggle for everyone. I guess it comes down to what you want. And if you are fishing for goldfish, you're going to be catching goldfish. But if you're fishing for tuna, you're not using the same fishing rod as when you're fishing for goldfish.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So it's a different game, and running a business is completely different to being an employee. So when you're solo, you're essentially setting yourself up to be an employee.
Yeah.
And that's where most lawn mowing businesses stay.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, and talked to numerous people about this where they employ somebody, grow their business. They might even get to 2 employees, and then the employee's getting up on them.
Oh, well, I guess too. That's a possibility.
So, if the employees are not getting good guidance from the business owner, they start whinging about the business owner.
Well, that's where you get that sort of, poor culture from the inside that sort of eats you from the inside out effectively.
Yeah, so that's where businesses grow, shrink, because they put on an employee, maybe 2, maybe 3 even, and then they get rid of them because they're no good, or the employees leave because they don't like the business.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, it's a vicious circle for a lot of people.
Definitely.
Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas, and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through to 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season.
Thank you for listening to Aussie LawnStars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.